When I was a kid, my first experiences gaming was with the SNES and the Mega Drive, and I was a massive fan of both the Mario games and the Sonic games. And growing up, I often changed my mind on who I liked better. I remember me and my friends in infant school and in later primary school arguing about who was better, Sonic or Mario. So I thought I would, as a grown man, take an honest look at both of these original trilogies of these two classic characters and decide a winner from that. I know that the original Mario trilogy was on the NES and the Sonic trilogy was on the powerful Mega Drive, but who gives a shit about graphics? This is going to be based on pure enjoyment. So let's put the two game characters that got me into gaming in the first place head to head and see who comes out on top. Let's start with both the first games in these trilogies. Super Mario Bros. Was released way back in 1985 in Japan and North America, with us Brits finally getting the game in 1987. Fuck me, Nintendo always fucks over the UK and Europe when it comes to releases. Fucking bastards. But none of this meant anything to me because, you know, I wasn't even born yet. I was born 4 years later in 1991, and I actually played Super Mario Bros. For the first time in 1994 when I was free around my friend's house on the SNES re-release collection Super Mario All-Stars. And this very game was actually the first game that I ever played in my entire life, and I remember that day like it was yesterday. After struggling with the first level,
God, he sucked at video games when he was free.
as I was saying, my younger self struggled with the first level as I was getting the basic concepts of the game and gaming in general. I remember my older friend explaining how the running works and how to use the fire flower, and he also showed me where all the secrets were on this iconic first level, like the pipe that takes you to the end of the level, and the bonus life hidden invisibly here. All this stuff blew my tiny mind. It was like I was just scratching the surface of the multi-layered onion that was Super Mario Bros. It's a masterclass in game design, it really is. Miyamoto is truly an absolute fucking genius. This game just hits that perfect balance of difficulty that makes you want to come back and play it over and over again. After a few goes, I had finally mastered the first level, and I was on to the second level, which is where my older friend showed me the whole warp pipe trick. Again blowing my mind. I never get tired of running up near the score. I wonder who figured this out for the first time. I remember always getting stuck on the water level anytime I'd played this game around my mate's house. It was like learning a new rule set. The fucking squids used to do my bloody head in. I have this very distinct memory of me getting annoyed and shouting, "That's not fair!" any time a squid would kill me. They're still fucking annoying now, to be honest with you. The first time I got up to a castle, I actually remember kinda getting a little bit intimidated, but I did just think it all looked really awesome and cool. The first time I got attacked by these fireballs, I was getting curious about where the fuck they were coming from. And when I finally got up to Bowser, I didn't know what the fuck I had to do. I actually tried jumping on his head. My thought process was, that works on all the other enemies. Why wouldn't it work on him? It obviously didn't work. My older friend showed me what I had to do, and I know it seems like the easiest thing ever now, but it wasn't really that obvious at first. And now I think about it, Bowser was my first boss fight. He was probably a lot of people's first. That sounded a bit dirty. It sounded like Bowser was some dirty old prostitute that showed millions of boys the ways of love. But yeah, when I finally beat Bowser, I was so happy and excited. My young naive brain thought I'd beat the game. And why wouldn't I think this? I had no other frame of reference. And it's then that I found out there was a whole other 7 worlds to beat. And that's honestly as far as I could get as a child. I'd generally get stuck somewhere in world 2, usually the castle.
What a noob, young me. You should have got good. Stop crying. How are you ever going to deal with life if you can't take a little bit of criticism?
But this first experience of this amazing game would prompt me to beg my parents to get me my own SNES. I just wanted to play Mario at my house. And in 1996, for my birthday, I would finally get my own SNES. My neighbour wanted to get himself a PlayStation and he needed the money for that, so my mum cut a deal with him and I had myself my first games console. But little did my mum know that my dad had also got me a console off a mate at work, the Sega Mega Drive. God knows why they didn't know they'd both got me game consoles, but they did, so there you go. I had 2 consoles. And did I ever play the hell out of that SNES? I got a lot of games that have stuck with me to this day bundled with that system. There was Street Fighter 2, Super Mario Kart, Super Bomberman 3, Super Mario World, and most importantly, Super Mario All-Stars, the game that had captured my imagination so much. I finally had my own SNES, and of course I played the fuck out of the original Super Mario Bros. On this collection, and I got a lot better at the game, and I would usually be able to get up to about World 5 or 6, or somewhere around there. But the enemy that used to do my head in the most was Lakitu, or however you're supposed to fucking pronounce it. You know, this guy from World 4-1. I hated this fucker. I remember it taking me tons tons and tons of deaths to finally figure out how to fucking kill the bastard. I was very annoyed when I realised he respawns. I used to always just run through this level not collecting anything because I hated it so much. And trust me, that was hard for me to do because I love to make sure I collect basically everything in this game. So basically Super Mario Bros. Holds a lot of nostalgia for me, you know, it being my first game and all. I don't think there's any other game that elicits this kind of raw emotion from me. Talking about all these memories surrounding this game does honestly get me all misty-eyed and nostalgic. It just portals me back to a simpler time when I wasn't an adult being slowly beaten down by life. This is quite an unpopular opinion, but I think this is honestly my favourite Super Mario Bros. Game. I know most people pick Super Mario Bros. 3 or Super Mario World, but this game has always been my favourite. Now, in the cold light of the future, disregarding my obvious bias towards this game, does this game actually hold up, or is it just all a nostalgia boner? Of course it fucking holds up, it's Super Mario Bros. It's an amazing game that I still play to this very day. I think for me the thing that makes this game so perfect is the control of Mario. It just feels so goddamn spot on and perfect. It's just so satisfying to play when you've got everything in this game internalized like I have. It almost feels like you're playing the game on autopilot and it never gets old for me. The level design is just so fucking good. Well, you know, apart from the castle where you have to take the correct path before you can fucking proceed. Fucking hell, Miyamoto was an early version of an internet troll. What a git. Everyone seems to act like this is the easiest game ever, but I honestly think it's quite the challenging game. Especially in some of the later levels, the hammer boss on a few levels can honestly go fucking jump off a cliff. This one right here on the last bit of the last level is honestly the hardest bit in the whole fucking game for me personally. I can do the whole game like it was nothing pretty much every time I play this, but it always comes down to the luck of the gods on this fucking bit. I didn't actually beat this game until about 3 or 4 years ago, and what I mean by that is, I'd never beat the original version where you only got one continue. I beat the Super Mario All-Stars version somewhere in my teens, and that was a lot easier because you could just go back to the beginning of whatever world you got to. But with the actual original game, if you run out of lives, that's it. And this proved to be a bit of a challenge for me. 3 or 4 years ago, I set myself the goal to finally beat Super Mario Bros. So I got the NES Classics version for my Game Boy Advance, and every day in my breaks at work I'd do a few runs. And after a couple of weeks I finally beat it. And I finally felt like my journey with this game was done. I even played through the Game Plus mode straight after and beat that. I don't know why, but it just felt like a big moment. I know it's a bit sad, but this is a game that's been with me my whole life, and it's the game that started my lifelong love of video games. It's basically the whole reason I ended up making this channel, and this game is perfect, and I fucking love it. Sonic the Hedgehog. As I said in the Super Mario Bros. Section, in 1996 for my birthday I got both the SNES and the Mega Drive. And sure, for the first few months I was way too into playing the Mario games. But after a bit I finally turned my attention over to the Mega Drive. I went through periods of liking Mario more and other periods of liking Sonic more as a kid, which has kind of as an adult led me to love them both equally. And of course the first game I played on my Mega Drive was Sonic the Hedgehog. I was instantly drawn to it in the pile of Mega Drive games because of the cool looking design of Sonic. I was so into Sonic that I even used to watch that terrible Sonic animated show.
Kids, there's nothing more cool than being hugged by someone you like. But if someone tries to touch you in a place or in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, that's no good.
I need an adult.
Ugh, I used to love that show. I was a kid, I didn't know any better. I remember one birthday my mum made me a Sonic cake. I wish I had a picture of that. And I have some pretty strong memories of me getting the Sonic comics at the local supermarket every week as well. But for whatever reason, the first Sonic game never was a Sonic game that I was a massive fan of. I much preferred the later 2 games and the Sonic & Knuckles game. So I will freely admit that this is a game that I don't have a great deal of nostalgia for. If I remember rightly as a kid, I could never get past the Spring Yard Zone. And I can see in many ways where young me was coming from in not really liking this game, but I think it's better than young me gave it credit for. I think young me was put off by how fucking difficult this game is. I would definitely say that it's harder than Super Mario Bros. But I might just suck at this game more than Super Mario Bros. Through lack of familiarity. There's nothing wrong with the controls of Sonic, but it does kind of feel like you're playing Super Mario Bros. But you're not allowed to let go of the run button. But that's obviously the whole point of Sonic though, speed. But can we talk about that for a second? I know the whole point of Sonic is...
Yeah, gotta go fast! Run real fast!
But in this debut game, more than any other of the games in the series, I'd say you're going slower than the fat old Italian plumber more often than not. Sure, there's tiny little bursts where Sonic is going the reals fast, but they're very few and far between, and that's mainly because if you do what Sonic is actually known for, you will die a lot. So no, Sonic, don't go fast unless you want to die. This is going to be quite the controversial opinion, but I honestly think the first Sonic game is the much slower playing game out of the two games. You actually really do have to be very slow and methodical, and in Super Mario Bros. You can basically run around like Usain Bolt on speed and be absolutely fine. But that's not to say the gameplay of this first Sonic is bad, it's just one of the biggest cases of false advertising in gaming history. As a thing you'll find yourself doing a lot in this game is waiting. Waiting for slow moving platforms. And it's not just one level where you'll be doing this, it's fucking most of the levels. And another area that rubs me the wrong way about this game is the fucking level design. I don't know what it is, but I just really don't like it. I've never really been a big fan of maze-like platform game design, that's probably why I hate most Metroidvania style games. I just do not like being lost in games. And that's something that does happen in this game sometimes. I mean, all the levels have more than one way to go through them, which is pretty cool, but sometimes it can be a bit of a pain in the ass to find your way around. The later Sonic games really did a better job in this respect. But one area where Sonic is much better than the original Super Mario Bros. Game is in its boss battles. Dr. Robotnik or Eggman or the artist formerly known as Prince or whatever the fuck he wants to be called will always have a different robot machine that he's trying to murder you with. Sure, most of these battles basically just boil down to don't get hit and bonk him on the head a few times, but at least it keeps you guessing, unlike Mario where you just fight Bowser 8 times. This game did introduce everyone's favourite nightmare-inducing Sonic game mechanic, suffocating to death underwater. That fucking music that happens when you die still haunts me to this very day.
Ugh, that's bringing back some horrible memories. I'm gonna go to bed. Let's go to bed, shall we? Just forget about that Sonic. Not again. Oh, it's the only thing that makes the dream stop.
I can't be the only one that's mentally scarred by that part of the game, and I also can't be the only one that fucking hates these bonus games that you get when you jump through a ring at the end of the level. Sonic turns into a ball and you have to navigate these weird trippy mazes to get a crystal that's somewhere in the level without falling into the areas that say goal on them. Getting these crystals is the way you can bag yourself more continues, and this bit would have been all well and good if it didn't control like complete and utter shit. And I know some people will say that's the point, but there never is any point to purposely making something control like trash. I know I'm sounding very negative on this game, but I do really like it. I just think it's the worst of the original Sonic trilogy. It certainly is a bit rough around the edges, and some of the level design just eats away at my patience, which is a bit of a problem for me because I am the least patient man you can think of. But it's still a fun game with an amazing soundtrack that makes me feel instantly nostalgic. Now I think you can easily tell who's going to get the first point. Of course, it's Mario who's going to get the first point. I don't think there was any way of Sonic really getting that first point. I mean, Super Mario Bros. Was the first game I ever played and the game that sent me on my lifelong journey with video games. And it's a game I've played so much that I know it like the back of my hand. And the first Sonic game was just the Sonic game that didn't click with me. It's mainly because of the level design and the fact that you have to have patience of iron to play this game. And Super Mario Bros. Gameplay is just so much smoother. That first one may have been a bit of a breeze for the Italian stallion, but I can assure you the next point will be hard fought. So let's have the second games in these trilogies go at it. Let's start with Super Mario Bros. 2, the black sheep of the original Super Mario Bros. Trilogy, and we all know why this game is the way it is. I'll let 8-Bit Davey, the angry historian retro gamer, explain it all.
Hey guys, it's your boy, 8-Bit Davey, the angry historian gamer, just chilling in front of my game shelf, and we're gonna talk about Super Mario Bros. 2 on the original Xbox. We're gonna talk about the secrets that no one's ever told you about this game.
Super Mario Bros. 2 is different to the other Mario Bros. Games, and do you want to know why? This is a super unknown fact, but this is another game with Mario put into it.
Here's a quote from Shigeru Miyamoto.
American and European gamers suck at video games, and they smell like poo-poo. They really need to get good. Wow, that was really informative information. No one has ever heard any of that information before. Who would have thought that Miyamoto coined the phrase get good in the 80s? What a trendsetter. But joking aside, I think we all know that this is just a reskinned version of a Famicom game called Doki Doki Panic. And I think that the fact that this game is a different game with Mario duct taped into it really works against it. Because when you're judging it as part of the original Mario trilogy, you're obviously going to be a little bit more harsh on it as a result of that. I mean, I could have pitted the true Japanese Mario 2 against Sonic 2, but I'm not going to do that because this is the game we got, goddammit. This is a very opinion splitting game. I mean, as a kid I thought nothing of this game, I just thought it was another Mario game. Sure, it was the one I played the least, but that doesn't mean it didn't have a lasting effect on me. I do remember at first being a little bit confused by the fact that I couldn't kill the enemies by jumping on them, but once I was used to that, I was loving the game. I think this game would be a lot more well regarded if it wasn't released as a Mario game, because if you take this game out of the context of the original Mario trilogy, it really is a pretty awesome game. It just has a bit of a different feel. Having to pick up the enemies when you're standing on their heads and having to throw them as weapons really changes the game. It makes this entry in the trilogy feel more like a puzzle platformer than anything. I mean, the air quotes puzzles aren't exactly that hard, but it does require a little bit more thought than your average Mario game, with you sometimes having to grab keys to open doors and stuff like that. And while we're talking about the keys, I just want to bring up the enemy that guards these keys. The Phantos masks. These creepy fuckers still scare the fuck out of me to this day. Much like the drowning in Sonic, they just give you that sense of impending dread. I'll never forget the first time I came across these Phantos. I was around my friend Martin's house and he was showing me the ropes of this game because it had confused me a little bit. And you go into this pot with these fuckers in. And I was wondering, why couldn't I touch these guys? Why aren't they moving? Then BAM!
Oh no, not again!
I hate these gits. The more puzzly nature of this game definitely really rears its head in the boss battles of this game. Take for example Birdo, who you have to catch the eggs of so you can smack her in the face with them. Yeah, right in the face! Woo! Sure, everyone knows this now, but the first time you played this game it was definitely something you had to figure out. And I've got to admit, it took my small child brain a few deaths before I figured this out. And you have to fight Birdo in slightly different settings every time, kinda like you have to with Bowser in the first game, but unlike Bowser, Birdo is just a mini-boss. The main bosses in Super Mario Bros. 2 are actually all different, which is a nice breath of fresh air. I mean, sure, none of these fights are actually that challenging, but they're still fun nevertheless. And this was also the first Mario game where you could actually select what character you wanted to play as. There's Mario, Luigi, Toad and Princess Peach, and they all actually control differently. They aren't just straight palette swaps of each other. And we all know that Princess Peach is the best character in this game. We all know that hover jump is OP as fuck. While it's not my favourite of the original Mario games, it's definitely a fun game that's got some catchy as fuck music. Super Mario Bros. 2 is definitely underrated. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is without a doubt my favourite Sonic game. They just sorted out everything I hated from the first game. In the first game it just kind of felt like you built up momentum far too slowly, but here Sonic is up to warp speed within seconds, which really helps make the pace of this sequel feel more speedy. This sequel really does live up to what Sonic was touted as, a fast as fuck platformer, because in my opinion the first game honestly feels glacial at times. And helping with this feeling of speed is the fantastic level design, that is honestly still maze-like it was in the first game, but it's just done in a much better way. You never feel like you're completely lost. You can usually find your way even when you don't know what's going on, which honestly happens quite a lot in this game. Sure, all of these improvements make the game a lot easier, but I don't think the challenge of the first game was fun challenge. This game doesn't waste your time as much as that first game does, and I'd rather have an easier game that's fun to play than a test of patience. This time out, Sonic has a companion along for the ride, the little red fox himself, Miles per hour. I get it, it sounds like miles per hour, because, you know, gotta go fast and all that bollocks. Tails honestly spends most of the game getting himself killed and generally being a massive pain in the arse, but you can let a human take control of him and that kind of acts like a very basic form of co-op until the person playing Sonic starts actually playing the game and leaves Tails in his dust. So basically having someone play as Tails is a waste of time. But of course Tails was always good to let your annoying little brother or cousin play to shut them up for 10 seconds and to make them think they were playing as well. I was the annoying little brother, so I used to spend a lot of time being Tails.
God damn it, Scott!
But I will give the little bastard this, he's very useful on the boss battles because he can't die and he can just go for the boss with reckless abandon while you keep Sonic out of the way and safe. The boss battles are actually a bit more involved and interesting this time round. I mean, they're not exactly the hardest thing ever, but they're still fun, so that's all that matters. The boss fight on the casino level has got to be my favourite, where you've got to use Sonic like a pinball to kill the artist formerly known as Robotnik. Another small addition that I really like is the inclusion of a little charge up boost that you can use to get up stuff that would be too hard to get up with just running. This could be a problem in the first game at times, as you would feel like you're completely stuck at the bottom of an incline, and it would just take you ages to get out of it. So this is a nice little added feature. The original Sonic the Hedgehog is a game that I honestly don't have that much nostalgia for, cause it used to bore me senseless, but it's not the case with this second game. I played this game to death as a child, and whenever I pop in this game, waves. Wait, what was I saying? Oh yeah, waves of nostalgia just wash over me, especially when I hear the fucking catchy music that plays in the Chemical Plant Zone. God, that's a good song. This, in my opinion, is the finest Sonic game and one of the best platformers on the Mega Drive. But is it better than Doki Doki Panic? I mean, Super Mario Bros. 2. In this match, there can only be, of course, one winner, and that winner is Sonic the Hedgehog 2. While Super Mario Bros. 2 is a really fun game in its own right, it just doesn't do enough to beat the platforming perfection of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. And if I could award points based purely on the music from Chemical Plant Zone, I would. That would have decided the battle straight away. Super Mario Bros. 3. The beautiful golden boy of the original Mario trilogy that everyone will always say is their favourite Mario game on the NES, and some indeed will go as far to say it's their favourite Mario game overall. My favourite Mario game is obviously Mario's cocaine-fueled Boat Party 64. But not me, I must be the only one who likes the original Super Mario Bros. Game the best. I don't know, there's just something about the setup of that original Super Mario Bros. Game I find so fun, and it being my first video game ever probably has something to do with my love for it. But even with all that said, I do still really enjoy Super Mario Bros. 3, even if I don't exactly have the same level of nostalgia for it. I mean, I still played it a lot growing up, but just not as much as the original. Super Mario Bros. 3 is a return to the more familiar gameplay of the first Mario Bros. Game. If you ignore the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2, that's as hard as Ron Jeremy on set with an 18-year-old. Nintendo was right in not releasing the real Super Mario Bros. 2 outside of Japan, but even if you take the true second game into account, Super Mario Bros. 3 is a bit of a return to the gameplay that's a little bit more fair in the difficulty department. With the first game, it just felt right. It just felt in that Goldilocks zone of not too hard but not too easy. And they definitely went overboard with the graphics for this game. I mean, for an NES game, this game looks fucking amazing. I mean, Mario actually has an outline now, not just a bunch of square flesh-coloured pixels. And this game introduced one of my favourite Mario power-ups, the raccoon tail thing. Being able to control your jump mid-air almost feels like cheating, but it's just so satisfying to use it. It always fucks me up when I get hit and lose it after using it for ages. It's almost like I have to learn to play again. And of course you have the frog suit that everyone got excited about and used on a non-water level for the first time and thought, what the fuck is the point of this useless power-up? I can't be the only one that did that. I mean, it is kind of stupid having a fucking power-up you can only use on like 5 levels. There's also the Tanuki suit, which is exactly the same as the raccoon tail, but you can turn into stone. Great, I guess. But I mean, it does look like Mario is flipping everyone off when he turns into stone, so that's good, I guess. Fuck all of yous! And the other suit you get is the Hammer Bros suit, which gives you all the powers of a Hammer Bro. Finally, I can give these cunts a taste of their own medicine. This is for all the childhood trauma you put me through, you fucking bastards! But the thing that this game introduced that trumps all of that shit is sliding down hills on Mario's powerful ass that can kill all who get touched by it. Damn, Mario's got back!
She looks like a total prostitute, okay? I mean, her butt is just so big. I can't believe it's just so round. It's like out there. I mean, gross. Look, she's just so black.
I like big butts and I cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny. Yeah, when a girl walks in with an itty bitty.
This was also the first Mario game to include mini-bosses, with you actually having to fight one of Bowser's many children in the middle of worlds. Wait, how did Bowser have children? Is there some kind of horrifying lady Bowser that he made tens of children with? Ugh, don't even want to think about that one. And these mini-bosses all boil down to don't get hit and jump on their head 3 times, and as you go through these fights they get harder and harder. And at the end of each world, instead of having to go through a castle, you'll have to fight your way through a cannon-laden wooden airship. that will have one of Bowser's deformed offspring for you to fight. These Bowser kids do have a little bit more personality than the mini bosses, but they're also pretty samey to be honest with you. Super Mario Bros. 3 also added in this overworld screen that lets you select levels and take part in a wide array of annoying mini games that no one in their right mind would actually enjoy, but you know, they're a good way to stack up on lives, I guess. One of the more annoying things about this original NES version of Super Mario Bros. 3 is that there's no way of saving your progress. I mean, this isn't exactly the shortest Mario game ever, and it is a bit annoying. I remember a friend of mine once telling me that he left his NES on for a week so he could beat this game because he didn't want to lose his progress. It is nice how when you lose all your lives you just start off at the beginning of the world you got up to, but having no save feature is still kind of a pain in the arse. Even though this isn't personally my favourite Mario Bros. NES game, I get why it's everyone else's favourite. It's a great game with a lot of interesting level designs and power-ups. Maybe I just like the more arcadey feel of the original, as it doesn't really require that much of a time investment to do a few runs in the original. But this is still a game I really enjoy, and I really do need to sit down and actually finish this game one of these days. But how does this game stack up against Sonic the Hedgehog 3? Well, let's see. Sonic the Hedgehog 3. As if in stark contrast to Super Mario Bros. 3, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is the game in the original Sonic trilogy that I put the least amount of time into. I was either playing the second Sonic game or the Mega CD game. I've had such limited experience with this entry in the series that it honestly feels like a completely new game to me. I remember a couple of bits from the early levels, but not much else, so I'm basically coming at this game with fresh eyes. And I definitely enjoyed this game a lot more than I did when I played it briefly as a kid. There have been a few changes, but it really does just feel like Sonic 2.5. Sure, much like in the third Mario game, they've added a few power-ups for Sonic, but they basically all do the same thing. There's a fire bubble that can launch Sonic flying forward in the air at the enemy if you double tap the jump button, and there's a bubble shield that allows you to breathe underwater and gives you a quite frankly useless bubble bounce move. And the last new shield at Sonic's disposal is a thunder shield that attracts nearby rings and gives him a double jump. And you also get to play as Tails in this game, which isn't exactly that exciting, I guess, but it's better than Luigi in the Mario games because, you know, Tails actually plays slightly differently. You know, he can fly, sort of, and stuff. This game also introduces mini-boss fights at the end of the first level in a zone with one of Robotnik's robot cronies. And these little fights are actually quite fun, and they help make beating every level feel like a bit more of an occasion. And of course, along with these mini-boss fights, you get the usual Robotnik fights at the end of each zone. And these are of course fun as well. And the last change between this game and the Sonic games that came before it is the fact that the game now actually saves your progress as you go along. And I have really mixed feelings about this choice, as it kind of feels like it trivialises the challenge of the whole game a little bit, because you could definitely beat this game a whole lot easier than you could in the old games, which made you go back to the start on death. But I guess if I want to make it harder for myself, I could just start back at the first level every time I get a game over. But who's going to do that when an easier option is available? Of course most people are going to take the easy option. And that's basically all that's been changed in this third Sonic game. There's really not a whole lot that's been changed between this game and the second, which is why I said that this game feels more like Sonic 2.5 than anything else. But it's not to say that the good old Sonic formula isn't still fucking fun, it's just got a few things working against it. But one of the main things Sonic 3 has going for it is the fact that it introduced every nu metal loving teenage boy's favourite Sonic character, the angsty lovable git that is Knuckles.
Stole your gems, Chew.
And yeah, he basically just turns up every now and again to mess with Sonic, and he's generally a bit of a dick to be honest with you. But I used to love Knuckles basically because of his design and the fact that he was angsty and full of 90s tood. Needless to say, I used to love using the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge to put my homeboy Knuckles into other games. And other than that stuff, Sonic 3 is basically more Sonic 2 with some incremental changes, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. It's still a really fun game, but I actually think the save feature kind of kills a lot of the replay value. But it's still a great game nevertheless. But did it do enough to defeat Super Mario Bros. 3? And now we come down to the deciding point that will crown the victor of this battle. And I'm gonna have to give the win to Mario. Super Mario Bros. 3 just improved on the Mario formula so much, and Sonic the Hedgehog 3 in comparison didn't change enough, and I just felt like it was a little bit stale and rushed. I know there's going to be people that disagree with my decision, and that's fine. Everyone has their own different histories with both series and different things that they're into. So let me know in the comments below who you would have picked and why. I would love to hear your opinions. Also, Who's Better is a series of videos I do, so let me know if you have any good ideas for future matchups you'd like to see. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you later.